Greetings and salutations, all you folks out there. It is time for another Tutorial Tuesday, and this time we're going to be talking about faction-wide strategies. Today we're going to do Aeon, because I have people ask me about Aeon constantly. What do I do at what stages of the game? What do I do in this situation or that situation? Well, today I'm just going to do a general overview of what you should know about Aeon as a faction. I'm not going to talk about unit statistics a lot. If you want to know unit statistics, go watch the other tutorials because I did a ton of information about unit abilities and statistics. So I'm assuming that you know all that there is to know about these guys, and I'm going to tell you how to use them. And again, if you disagree with anything that I say or have anything to offer further about what I say, head to the comments. There's going to be 2K players that are down there commenting. They always follow these videos, and I'm glad they do because they point out things that I haven't thought of. So let's assume that you're at the beginning of the game and talk about the T1 units. So we have the typical lab main tank. We have our Arty, a scout, and anti-air, which I don't think we really need to deal with because that's pretty self-explanatory. Aeon is kind of paper. They have a relatively low health ACU. It is, actually that is an SACU, so I need to get him out of here. It is only 11,000 health, which is the second lowest. Cybern is the only one with lower health. And it has an odd T1 group. All of the T1 units have under 200 health. So these die, and they die very quickly. But they have some strengths which more than make up for the weaknesses of this little group of units right here. For one thing, the scout and the main tank hover. So if you have a map with some water on it, you can easily get across the water so early in the game that typically your opponent will not have a way to deal with it unless he has bombers in the air or an excess amount of tanks in other areas of the map. It's going to allow you to expand more quickly and just generally get an upper hand in those crucial first few minutes of the game. Now, one other thing to remember is the vision radius on the Aurora is smaller than the attack radius, and I say this all the time, but I keep saying it because I still see people who do not send scouts with their Auroras or who don't have radars. Scouts are ridiculously cheap. Send them with your Auroras because it makes your Auroras at least 3 times as effective. Your Auroras will die to other tanks if they're inside vision radius, but you can kite them. So the Aurora is, if you rush them head first into the other factions, it is by far the weakest tank. And if you kite correctly and micro well, it is the strongest T1 tank by a fairly wide margin. Some of the upper echelon players I have heard say that the Mantis is borderline, or not the Mantis, the Aurora is borderline OP. I don't know if I would go that far, but it is definitely extremely strong. So the T1 phase is going to be strong for Aeon. And another thing to remember about the Aeon is that they have a nifty set of upgrades on their commander. If you build an energy storage and you have overcharge, you can get the range upgrade, which replaces tier 2. This is going to be for an aggressive build suite, and that will allow you to reach way farther than any other ACU or any units in the T1 to T2 phase. This matches range with the range bots. And, of course, the mobile missile launchers outrange it, but that's not super important. The range on this is so big that you can actually effectively attack fire bases with your ACU as long as you have some units in between you and them, because you can dodge PD shots when you're so far out. And another thing with that to remember, this gun upgrade is actually very cheap. It's a couple hundred mass cheaper than the other ACU's gun upgrade. So the range helps you out, especially if you're abusing overcharge. But then you can also get the enhanced sensor system, which only costs 400 extra mass minus 200 power. These two together are extremely cheap. And the enhanced Omni, which is this big, directly buffs your auroras, because if you're running with your auroras, they will always have radar coverage even when they're stealth around. So that is a huge bonus. This is going to make it for an extremely strong, aggressive T1 phase. Now, if you're going to want a turtle, you can play defensively with your kiting auroras, but I typically would not recommend turtling with Aeon because they have a lackluster T2. Now, their T2 is not terrible, but it is definitely not the best one. I'll leave it at that. They have the worst, arguably, MML. It cannot take on fire bases. A single TMD from your opponent can negate 3 or 4 or 5 even songs. You basically might as well not even build these if your opponent is going for an extremely strong defensive posture, because they can outbuild you with TMD. The main battle tank is strong. Flak, nothing really super to say about that. The, did not mean to ping. But the Obsidian, the problem with the Obsidian is that it has relatively short range and not a whole lot of movement speed. So it has a whole bunch of health that it can tank with, but it can't overtake units and it can't outrange them, which is a serious problem. It is a bulky, heavy unit that is good once you're actually in the middle of the melee, but until you get to that point, good luck. And then the Blaze has a pitifully low DPS. It is very fast. You can use it to run down range bots, but it's not the best use of the mass. So T2, you're going to run into some issues. You're not just going to be completely ground into a paste, but it's going to be hard. One of the things that you can use to alleviate this, and you can see here, the difference in range between the Aurora and the Obsidian. And the problem with the Aurora is its lack of health. What you can do is you can build mobile shields and mix in with your Auroras. Build an excessive amount of mobile shields because these are cheap. They only cost 75 power to run. They're the cheapest mobile shield. They have a good amount of health. They're just cheap health. And you can use these to buff your Auroras. Mix them in a shield to every 7 or 8 or 9 Auroras, depending on how much mass and power you have available. And your Auroras can match or beat range with most T2 units. And then these, I cannot remember. They are either the same speed or slightly faster than the Obsidian. I think they're slightly faster than the Obsidian is. Slightly is key. They are faster, but only by a hair. But you can add these mobile shields in to protect them. So that will help get you through T2 phase. If you have the range upgrade on your ACU, if you have the radar and you have mobile shields mixed in with your T1, then you can pretty effectively guard against your enemy's pushes until you can get to T3, which is where Aeon really shines. If you're in a game for T3, you need to rush Harbingers because Harbingers are extremely fast, fairly strong damage and good health for their mass cost, and they're highly maneuverable. You can dodge bombers all day with these things. And then they can also reclaim, so these things can get mass for you. Even if you're versus a UEF opponent, if you can get Harbies out first, if you can get 2 Harbingers up before he gets his first Percival, you can basically hold him at a stalemate interminably because your Harbies microed 2 Harbies will beat a Percival. So you can pretty easily keep up with them on that. Now, once you're engaging with huge groups, the Harbingers are going to be significantly weaker than the Bricks or Percivals. Even the Authams, they have a little bit of an issue dealing with. But these are a very incredibly strong T3 rush unit that you're going to want to abuse the ever-living daylights out of to make up for the lackluster T2. Now, one other thing that can help you in T1 and T2 and even the early T3, is the Aeons Air Superiority. They have the cool air tools that all the other guys envy. They've got the Mercy, which you can use to really get cheese kills. People will hate you, but, you know, it doesn't matter. Kaboom. If his ACU is dead, it's dead. You've got the Swift Wind, which is the star player that you're going to use to control the skies. And just in general, they have a fairly good selection. The T2 Gunship is the same as a couple of other factions, but it is a good one to use. And the T1 Bomber has the stun effect, which you can use into the T2 and T3 stage to stun units and keep them down while so that your units are able to overpower them. So you're going to want to use your air tools, especially the Swift Wind, because that's what you're going to use to get and hold air control at the late T2 land phase, I would say, is typically when this is going to come into play. And that can be a huge boon to your game. Now, once you start moving into the mid T3 stage, where things are starting to get a little bit tougher, you're not going to have a T4 yet, but you're having to deal with groups of 4 or 5 Percivals at a time, and you're starting to have a little bit of an issue keeping up. Well, you need to build T3 mobile artillery and sniper bots, as well as spamming your shields. You always want to have mobile shields as Aeon. These guys basically behave like a mobile missile launcher. They can fire on the move, but they do anticipate the trajectory of a unit, so they will be able to reliably hit units in most cases. Build some T3 mobile artillery and you'll have a serious advantage over the other guys, because you will be able to outrange their main units, and whereas the other faction's T3 mobile artillery has to stop to shoot at you, you can just run away and you keep on shooting the entire time because they fire on the move. Then you're going to want to use the sniper bots. These guys, I'm not sure what to say about them exactly. They have incredibly high alpha damage, and they move reasonably well. You're going to want to move in, strike, move back. And they have a 14-second recharge cycle, I think. Something like that. They are more accurate when they're standing still than when they're moving, but they're still relatively effective when they're moving, especially if you have a group of units that you're firing into, because then if it misses one, it'll probably impact another one before it goes out of range of the group. These are going to give you the distance attack that the Harbingers so severely lack, and that is their main weakness against Percivals and Bricks, is the range. So if you're able to use, you might even throw in an Absolver if the other guy's building a lot of mobile shields. You can break shields easily as Aeon, and then use your sniper bots to help lay in damage before the units actually get to you. So with Aeon, you have to get creative. You have to know what you're doing and manipulate the abilities of the units to their maximum extent, but Aeon is not helpless in a T3 war. It's kind of the same as the Auroras. Auroras are completely useless if you go just into a conventional push with those tanks, because they will always lose due to their low health. You have to kite and use the range and babysit them. And Aeon T3 is kind of the same way. You have to micro your Harbingers. You have to micro your sniper bots. You have to keep moving with your T3 mobile artillery so it doesn't get shot. You have to make sure that you have mobile shields in. It is I'm not going to say it's a extremely hard faction to play, but it takes a lot more thought than UEF does, and maybe even than Cybern does. Cybern takes a little thinking, but Aeon more so. So you just have to be prepared for that. And one other thing to remember too is that Aeon does have a reasonably powerful drop. They have their T2 transport, into which you can load 2 Harbingers, or you can load a Harbinger into a T1 transport if you're very brave and have air control. Air control. The Swift Wind is back in the topic again. You can drop Harbingers, and these are superbly effective raiders. If you can get one of these into the back of your opponent's base and drop it, you can do an incredible amount of damage. And Harbingers are so fast that your opponent will very likely never catch up to it with his ACU to overcharge it. You just keep running and skirting his ACU, not ever letting it within range to overcharge it, and you can do... The damage that you can do with these is absolutely horrendous. Now, once you start getting into the late T3, the Galactic Colossus is a very strong unit. This is somewhat due to a bug, but it does take some thinking and some micro. The Galactic Colossus has 2 tractor arms, as I'm sure everybody here knows. These guys suck up units and dispose of them mightily, and I never noticed, but it looks like the Galactic Colossus has bear claws. Why do you have teddy bear prints on your hands? Why am I distracted by this? What am I doing with my life? The Galactic Colossus, though, is slightly bugged out because if it's walking, sometimes it has trouble using both of its claws. So if you come up to a big group of units, you're going to want to stop, first of all, because it has a relatively large range, and that's going to allow you to shoot some units before they walk into their own attack range. But additionally, if you stop your Colossus, if your Colossus is not walking, it's attacking the group, and it's facing square-shouldered directly at the incoming group, is going to have the maximum chance of using both tractor claws to their best possible potential. And that lets it kill loads of T3 units. So this is kind of a counter to the UEF, because UEF does not have a direct fire experimental. It has Percivals, and the Galactic Colossus is strongest against T3 units because it can just instantaneously kill them 2 at a time. So this is something that you're going to want to pair with some mobile shields in front to help soak up the damage, because T4s do lose to T3 mass for mass. You're going to have to throw some extra health into the equation. And then you're also going to want to have Harbingers. As soon as the Galactic Colossus is done killing everything, you use your Harbingers to suck up the mess that it made, and you build another Galactic Colossus. Because Galactics get exponentially stronger as the numbers go up. Because if you have 2 of them, you're instantaneously control K-ing 2 units at a time per Galactic Colossus. And you concentrate so much damage into such a tiny area that you're able to eliminate large armies of units very, very quickly and efficiently. And that, as you go up in the number of Colossuses, that actually increases. So you're going to want to have multiple of these if you're running into the late game, where you just have tons of eco to throw around and you don't know what to throw it at. But Aeon does have the other tool that they typically use, the donut, the T4 Mercy, whatever you want to call this thing. You basically drop it on people's heads and they go boom. This is a very handy tool to use if you have extra mass to throw away. It does make a fairly good anti-air platform. Again, Aeon, ruler of the skies. Same goes for its gunship, which is a dedicated anti-air gunship. Does a decent amount of damage. It is very good at concentrating mass. You can build these. It uses up a lot of mass if you have a lot of mass to spare, and then it concentrates a ton of DPS into a tiny, tiny area with a lot of range for an anti-air weapon. You can see the difference in range there. If you're running away with restorers, you're going to take a few minutes to catch up with your ASF. The restorer is going to get a lot of damage in there. Anywho, another thing to remember about Aeon is that they have the single strongest strap bomber, so sniping is an option there as well. So the overall theme to take away from this is Aeon has a ton of different options. Use them. You don't want to just build T3 main assault bots. You don't want to just build land. You have to branch out and think outside the box, and you have to use units to their maximum effectiveness. And one of the keys in that is early aggression with T1 with the Aurora, which gains you the map control to rapidly go to T3. You can entirely skip T2 in some cases. It's okay if you don't build any T2 units, except for mobile shields. Go ahead and skip T2. And go straight into Harbingers and get those out into the field. And that is basically how you win with Aeon. I've heard many players say that pretty much the only way to win reliably with Aeon is to abuse Aurora range, skip T2, and abuse early Harbinger for map control, and that gets you the map. That gives you the mass advantage to end the game. So there is your answer right there. I have people ask me constantly how to play Aeon because they have really bad luck with it. And I will grant you that it is somewhat of a difficult faction to play, but it is not impossible. All right, hopefully that was a reasonably good overview of the land game. I'm not going to go into Navy because Navy is kind of its whole own subdivision of Supreme Commander that really you're not going to get into dedicated naval battles on the vast majority of maps. I can't think of one off the top of my head that's not Settons, and that has its own meta. So I don't think that's really worthy. That's a worthy discussion. So we'll just leave that alone for now. But don't forget to mix your air. Always abuse your land strengths so that you can kind of skip over the mediocre units that they're not terrible, but not the best thing to use. Alright, I'm going to wrap it up right there. That is all I have to say about Aeon. Next week on Tutorial Tuesday, we will tackle another faction. I do not know which one yet. I just knew that I needed to do Aeon because I have people ask me this question all the time. So now I have a video to send them to, has an answer, and they can listen to it in its entirety, and I don't have to spend 25 or 30 minutes in chat answering it. That is not to say that you guys can't ask me questions. I always love helping people, but when I have a question that is asked this frequently, it is helpful to have a resource like this that I can point people to so that I can save myself and them a bunch of time explaining it in a concise manner. All right, enough rambly. I'm out of here. That is the end of this video. Thank you so much, as always, for watching. I hope I'll see you in the next one. Thumbs up if you liked it, thumbs down if you disliked it. I would love to interact with you guys in the comments. I'm trying to increase that because I want to engage with you guys. So talk to me down there. I will see you in the next video.